So I've seen companies of almost every size, from low millions in revenue to nine-figure organizations, fail or nearly fail because of botched succession. And very often the problem was not simply that they picked the wrong successor. The deeper issue often was they didn't really have a leadership team in place that was strong enough to carry the business through the transition. If your succession plan depends on a single individual, you've built a one-legged stool, and it might stand for a moment, but it's fragile and you're at risk. In this video, I'll show you what has to be in place if you want a leadership team that is actually ready for succession, so the company can stay stable, keep momentum, and continue pursuing the vision after the leadership transition. Now, there's a second part of this that matters just as much, and that's how you communicate the transition. Because even if you have the right successor and the right leadership team, poor communication can still create uncertainty, insecurity, and a loss of confidence. Now, I covered that topic in another video, but subscribe so it shows up in your feed. And like this video, if this is helping you think more clearly about succession, it helps other people find great content like this. I just had lunch yesterday with a friend of mine who was talking to a leader who had asked him for some help. And that leader is a successor in a new not a new organization, is a successor in a pretty established organization. But the successor is following a leader who has been viewed by many people as successful and as a prominent leader, is respected in many ways, and has gone on to, advise other people on how to lead. Meanwhile, this successor is saying, please come and help because everything is such a complete mess. Behind the scenes, the structure that he has to work with, there's nothing there. And they're one, mild storm away from just everything getting blown over. It's a sad and very common scenario. The statistics around succession is that for privately owned companies, only about 2/3 actually survive a succession process. They mostly don't make it through a change in leadership. Even for publicly owned companies, some of the largest, most established, regulated companies in the world, 1/3 of them don't survive secessions, or secessions are considered to be a failure in some way by their board or the investors in the company. And so if we think about secession as simply hiring a new CEO, we're dramatically oversimplifying what's involved. Now, I'm not going to get into everything you need to know about secession. If you look at my Secession 360 toolkit, which is on my website, you will get everything you need to know, or at least enough of it to be successful. What I really want to talk about now is leadership team. How do you prepare your leadership team for succession? So again, this is an important role. It's a critical role, and you want to have the right person here. But what you really want to think about is the system or the structure that actually holds the organization together. When I work with clients, I often talk about core functions in an organization. This is like the core organs in the human body. What's your heart and your liver and your lungs and your brain? And there's a few organs that you have in your body that if you don't have them, you're not alive. You can't function. And it's the same thing for organizations. So you have to have some kind of financial capacity and administrative capacity in your organization. You have to have some kind of operational capacity. This is how you produce or deliver whatever product or services that you have. And then you have to have some kind of sales or business development. You could throw marketing and all of those kinds of things. This is how you bring business in the door. And so whatever kind of organization you are, even if you're a nonprofit, then this is your fundraising side, and this is your donor management side, and this is how you pursue your mission, and then this is how you administrate everything in the background. And so you have to have these functions. Now, if you have larger organizations, maybe there's an R&D, maybe there's other functions as well, but these are the core ones that every single organization has to have if they're going to be sustainable over the long haul. And so you have an individual here that's running as the CEO, and you know that they're going to leave. Actually, what you don't know is that most secessions are actually emergency secessions. The CEO announces, hey guys, it's been great, it's been fun, but now I'm done. Here's my notice, I'm done at the end of the month. How do you find somebody within that short of a time frame? Or they get sick, or there's an accident, or something like that happens. That is the most common kind of secession dynamic that you're likely to experience, or you have to let them go. That's another scenario. Either way, that's the most likely kind of scenario that you're going to experience. You're not necessarily going to experience, just letting you know, in 18 months, I'm planning on retirement. So everybody is like well warned in advance. That's great. It does happen, but you shouldn't anticipate that being the most likely scenario. In any scenario you have, if you're going to have transition here, you want stability here. So thinking of the three-legged stool kind of idea is you want to make sure that if you've got your CEO here, that you've got these three legs that the stool can stand on, as opposed to the CEO being a single leg that supports everything. Point is you have to have stability, and leadership needs to be distributed throughout the organization. And so what you want to do is hire somebody that can oversee this role. You've got your finance person, you've got your ops director, you've got a sales or business development director that oversees these functions and the little organization or team that might, or maybe a large one that exists underneath each of these. When these people are fully in position and they're able to be effective and they own their roles, and they just need to be coordinated and mentored and kind of overall guided towards the vision, but they're not needing to have their hands held. They understand how to do that. They can meet industry standards. They're able to perform well. What happens is you can remove this individual, and at least in the short term, the organization will keep operating just fine, because all of your core functions are operating. Over the long term, you won't operate just fine. You need this sense of direction. You need those kinds of things that the leader provides. But in the short term, and I mean short term, I mean like a typical period of time in an emergency where you would need to go look for and find a new successor. So giving yourself maybe 6, maybe even 9 months, possibly on the outside a year to find the right person. This group of people, if they're organized in the right way, should be able to carry on the organization. It won't be without impact, but they'll be able to carry it on. Additionally, if even outside of succession, if this person gets recruited and gets headhunted by somebody and you're missing that role, that's going to be felt, but the whole organization doesn't tip over because it's not based off of one personality or one person. Additionally, if you want to take it a little bit further, what I encourage is that for each of these individuals, they have a little mini me, that they're mentoring at least one other person. So you've got your number one in each of these roles, your director, vice president, or team captain, or whatever you want to call them. You've got them in each of these roles, and then you've got each one of them has a number 2 over here. This way they can take vacations. This way, if they get sick, it doesn't make things tip over. If they go on maternity leave, you've got somebody who can step in. If they just leave or disappear, you've got somebody who can step in. And there's resiliency in the organization. So my recommendation is the first thing a CEO should do, or if there's a board or ownership group that oversees the CEO, is make sure that you have solid leadership over all of the core functions of your organization, however you define them. And that once you have that in place, that you encourage the CEO to make sure that there's a good second person, a good backup individual, at least one for each of those functions. That has a dramatic impact on building resiliency within your organization. Okay, the second part of this that I want to talk about, I'm just going to mention this briefly because I go into it at length in other videos, but the team functions well if the sense of direction is outside the team itself. And so what you want to have is a clear vision for the organization. And so if you have an organization that's operating with succession, you're going to have somebody in every case where there's a board or an ownership group, or there's somebody who's choosing the successor. The organization itself rarely does that, except for maybe like in the case of an ESOP or something like that. But even in that case, you'll have a board that's choosing who's in charge. And what you want to have is that board or the ownership team or whoever is making that decision needs to have defined and articulated a clear vision of the future that goes beyond the outgoing executive and provides guidance for the incoming executive. When that vision is clear and then there's some kind of plan for accomplishing that vision, then when you've got your CEO over here and you've got your finance admin role and you got your ops role and you have your sales role, when this part's clear and they all understand how to pursue this, if the CEO goes away for any reason, This team is not rudderless. They understand, well, we're still pursuing this and this is still the plan. Now we have to figure out how to manage this person's responsibilities, but it doesn't change any of this. And it creates a massive amount of stability, because if every time you change the CEO person, you change complete directions as an organization, it creates a lot of head snapping. It's disruptive. It's significantly disruptive. And it also puts you at risk of only being impacted by this single personality. And incidentally, this is a very common way of getting leaders, is to find a CEO who has their own vision. And I've heard this many times from boards. We just need to find someone who will tell us where to go. No, that's wrong. And that will create harm and problems for you. I mean, you might get lucky once in a while, but most of the time that creates problems. I'm going to go back to this. Don't think that you're immune to the fact that 2/3 of secessions fail. Oftentimes it's because there's all kinds of very hopeful thinking and very simplistic thinking that all we need to do is hire a new CEO. They'll come in with a new vision. They'll develop the plan. We don't really need to have a solid team, solid systems in place. We don't need to have a sense of direction. I hope you can see from this that if you've got a solid team in place, if there's clarity about where the organization is supposed to go, then this person can be removed, not permanently. This is a key function. This is a key role, but this person can be taken out for a time and the organization doesn't just fall apart. It's a huge strength. It's a huge strength if you can say that for any role or any position here. So I think that's probably all that needs to be said about this. Build a good team. Make sure that you've got your functions covered. Ideally, give each of them redundancy, because let's say your ops person gets pulled in an emergency to fill in for the CEO. If they have a solid second down here, then operations continues and things don't trip over themselves. You don't have a massive problem and a domino effect because one person left, which is very common. And if there's that clear vision and that clear plan, everybody still understands, well, this is a little different than what we expected, but we still know what we're going to do today. Hopefully that helps. So now you know what has to be in place for a leadership team to be ready for succession. The next question is how you communicate that transition without creating confusion, insecurity, or a loss of momentum. As I said earlier, even a good transition can be damaged by poor communication. I break that down step by step in the video on the screen right now. Click it and I'll walk you through how to plan and communicate a leadership transition without losing performance, alignment, or culture.